So if you guys have been keeping up with the channel, you know we went through a pretty rough freeze here just a little bit ago. Winter had one last spell for us. It got down to 27 degrees and we had snow and ice everywhere. We went out to the orchard, we were spraying the trees down, running fires underneath. So what made it? What survived? If you've kept up with last week's video, you saw our apricot did not make it. But our apricot, we only had a passive solution on there. It was outside the orchard fence, so it wasn't something we could run back and forth with. And so all we had to rely on with that was a frost blanket that I have some other ideas for. I don't think it's a completely wasted investment, but at least there it didn't work for us. So we'll take a look at these two peach trees first. Neither of these were protected. I did have just a plastic bag on a branch on this one and some Christmas lights because I heard that might help. We'll look at this tree and then the other one that had no protections whatsoever. See if we have any fruit, what these trees look like. Then we'll take to the orchard and I want to show you guys what each of the trees out there looks like and kind of make some extensive observations on what may have helped, what worked, what didn't, and you know, learn from that. So let's take a look. All right, so on this tree we had a trash bag, a black trash bag over top of the limb here. And the hope was that by keeping snow and ice off of the limbs here, then the blooms that were at least in the center would have a higher temperature. They wouldn't have any losses extra from freezing and thawing, that sort of thing. So I really hope to see some good effect in here, but it just got too cold and those blooms are gone. So I have not found any fruit down here. So then moving up into the branch up here, this is where we had Christmas lights going along up here, and I do not see any result from that of fruit. So, you know, that's a little disappointing as well. We had at least spent the time to string those up, but at least that wasn't an effective solution for the kind of night that we had. If you guys have had any experience with that working, I'd love to hear about it, so feel free to share. So how much fruit do we actually have on this tree? Well, so far I've only found two pieces. One of them is right here, this little guy. And the other is way over here on this limb. They stand out fairly well being green with all this dark maroon foliage. But those are the only two that I've found in this entire tree so far. It's very possible with them being small like they are now. There could be some up in here. But so far that's all I've found. And then if we come over here and look at this other tree, I've actually only found one in this tree. Right back here. Just one little guy over here. I didn't expect much to make it. We're actually look about like we did last year. Last year we had a similar kind of a cold spell without the precipitation, but it was later in the season. And we probably had 5 pieces of fruit on each of these. So those are kind of the results I'm expecting when we go to the orchard if our protections didn't work. But let's go take a look. There are some trees out here I didn't do anything for, like the yellow Newton pippin up here. It has a few apples on it, but it didn't have a lot of blooms either, so it wasn't one I was really trying to save, especially when I thought, you know, if I have to spread my time amongst several trees already, I just want to get the ones with heavy crops. One right here is our Franken tree. It's a Westfield Seek No Further primarily, and I've been adding a lot of different varieties to it. In fact, some of the varieties I've added, these two sticks are both Carey's Irish Pippin, and they're blooming right now, as is another variety over here, Carolina Red June, that's also blooming. I probably won't let the fruit stay on there, but you know, we'll see how it does. But in here, there should have been a good crop. There were a lot of blooms in here from the native variety, but all I've actually found in here is primarily the cluster right here. There's a few here, and then Ashmead's kernel, which I grafted last year. There's one of those right here. So I'm definitely gonna put a little sock on that, try and make sure that one stays protected, because I haven't been able to try that variety yet. So next up we have our Gravenstein apple here. Now this one does bloom across several weeks, so I did expect to have some amount of fruit, but we definitely have quite a bit in here. Good clusters of 2 and 3 apples. Not worried at all. I think it'll be what the tree can support. And actually there are even a few blooms that are still coming on. So it's not even done yet. So on this tree, we did have a plastic bag over top of this limb here. I did see a lot less damage to this limb, to its leaves overall. But the fruit set isn't that much greater. We did have the one fire down here. And looking up here, I think the crop is a little bit heavier. So on some of these blooms, we have a lot of fruit that has set. So I might actually have to thin some of these myself, but really pleased with the amount of fruit we're gonna get off of this tree this year. The Jonifree here actually still has some blooms as well. So actually that might be pollinating the last few Gravenstein blooms. But looking in here, even though some are still blooms, we do have little fruitlets starting in here. And a few that are even a little bit larger. If I can find some in here, yep. So right here we've got some forming. So certainly we're gonna have a decent crop. I don't know how long this tree is gonna last. It got some trunk damage that I've had to cover up. So it may be putting on a lot of fruit because it's about to actually die on me. Behind that, we've got the Freedom apple. And right up here where we had this fire, we definitely have some good amount of fruit set here, and we've got some over here, just all throughout. Then we've got our yellow transparent here. We've definitely seen some fruit set here. This is the branch that I had covered with a trash bag, and these are just full, very loaded, very good looking branches. But we have some in the back here that we didn't have any fires along the back, and the last fruit we've got is right here around the middle. But like along the limb here, there isn't any fruit set whatsoever. So I think without having the additional heat from the fires, that we weren't actually able to save any of the fruit there. There is some up here near the middle and then forward from there, but all this stuff towards the north side is very bare. And next we have the King of Tompkins County, and we've got 3 fires that were around it. These 3 here. And these make really large pieces of fruit. So you can see some of these already are getting to be fairly large. And even up here where we had between the 2 fires, we've even got a cluster of 5. Now the Liberty apple tree, I definitely babied. I've talked about it. It's about my favorite out here. It had 4 fires, and I even measured temperature sitting a thermometer right in the very middle of the tree, and it was at 37 degrees. So if someone was gonna make it, it better have been this tree, right? And this is the trash bagged limb I had, and it is just covered with fruit, and the foliage looks really nice on here. So we've got all sorts of fruit all over the place, and a very healthy looking limb. Other limbs don't really look that bad. They did initially, right after that night, had some damage from that ice, but overall still pretty decent survival rate on the fruit in here. And the last apple to take a look at is the Gold Rush. This had the most fruit on it after last year's freeze. We had about 3 dozen apples back here. But this year I didn't have any protections back here, partly because I knew it survived about the best. And so I was kind of hoping that that would happen again. But as you look along these limbs, they're very bare. I'm not seeing much fruit at all. Limb over here, I do see, a piece here. I've got a few pieces over here and over here. So certainly some has survived, but I'll be interested to see what kind of quantity we get when we didn't protect it, and it was the one with the best survival rate last year. All right, so we've got 3 nectarine trees, one here, and a large one here that's got quite a lot of foliage up there. And we had 2 fires running, one here and one here. So let's take a look at this fruit. It is hard to tell up in the top how much fruit there was, but if we take a look, especially down here near where that fire was, you'll see we've got a lot of fruit that's set. So I'm very excited to see that. I haven't gotten to taste any of these nectarines before this year, So I'm definitely looking forward to it at this point, and we'll have plenty. So very exciting to see how that's going. So with that plastic bag method in mind, if you do look on the limb here next to that one, where there wasn't a fire on this side, I don't see actually any fruit on here, except for a single one right there. But this limb here that had the bag on it, we've got fruit all up and down it. So I think it did actually help protect this limb. And up above in the back here on the north, I don't see any fruit out here. So I think just things that were above our fire, so things over in this area here, have a good crop on them. And then this one that was covered in the bag, but I'm really not seeing very much fruit, if any, up in the rest of the tree here. Looking at the next nectarine tree here, we do have some fruit set right up in here. There is some here as well, so we're gonna get to taste this variety as well. The limb I had covered with a trash bag is over here, and this, I could easily say, is the most heavily cropped branch on this tree. So I think that actually was more effective than I originally gave it credit for. And our final nectarine tree here has been looking kind of sad. I've actually had to cut down a little bit of it because there's just not a lot of good vigor here. So I'm hoping I can save it before it fully dies on me, but at least this year I'll get to try it and determine how much I actually want to save it. But we've got a good crop set in here, got some nice looking fruit. So I am excited to hopefully see the tree last long enough to eat some of these. So we didn't have a lot of pears to protect. This is our Bosque pear, and there were a decent number of blooms, but I really don't see very much fruit set in here at all, just a few. And mainly near the fire here is where we had some of those set, right on the end of this branch. Now I did have the fire there, and I had a fire here, and this pear here doesn't seem to have fruit on this side of the tree. There really isn't much. The first one is around the middle here, and then as you move in, we've got some here, we've got some up here that have formed, and then all along the edges here, we've got quite a bit of fruit. The other pear that we tried to save was this one here. We had this section here in a plastic bag, and the foliage again looked great. We actually had blooms on this limb and the other one here. This is a multi-grafted tree, and another variety here also had a bag on it. And it still had beautiful blooms after we took the bag off, because those blooms didn't get that ice on them to discolor them and turn them brown and all of that. And I didn't really see a loss in fruit. So in here, where it was covered, we have just so many Asian pears. It's just crazy how many we've got. So there will definitely be some thinning in here. And then the areas we didn't cover on this tree, we do see some fruit set. So, you know, we do have like 2 in the cluster here. We've got a few in clusters up here. But really, it was a lot more loss than it was saved. But then all these areas that we had the bags on, it's like every bloom turned into a piece of fruit. So I am really excited because the Shinshiki Asian pear so far is my favorite. I love just that fresh eating taste, that spiciness it has. It's just delicious. So excited to see that I'm gonna have that one again this year. Now moving into peaches, we've got 1, 2, 3 trees here, and then one of those red-leafed peaches out here in the back as well we'll take a look at. But I had a fire going here in the north to try and get up into the middle of the canopy of this large tree here, since that's where the wind was coming from. Looking in here, I don't see a whole lot of fruit up in the top, but when you get down here, we absolutely have some beautiful fruit coming in. So we've got these guys forming down here. I did throw one of those trash bags over this back limb here, and we've got some good quality stuff back in here. So really excited to see these. If we remember the red leaf peaches I showed you at the very beginning that had no active protection, 3 peaches across 2 trees. These are absolutely loaded. Where we had this fire down here, a lot of fruit here we're gonna be able to enjoy, and probably thin quite a bit again because we saved too much. So excited definitely to see that and to see just how much we've got here. And again, probably later in the season I'll come out here and we'll just take a look at, you know, how much fruit do we actually see up in the top here. Not too worried if I can't get to it and pick it. I do see some up there for sure, but if the chickens get to eat it, that's just less feed I have to give them, you know, and they'll eat the bugs out of it anyway. So, you know, an overabundance isn't a big deal when you've already got your cleanup crew out here. So this Finger Lakes here, we had the limb back here, again with that red piece of yarn, and that's absolutely covered as well. Lots of fruit out here we're gonna be able to enjoy. Way more than the 2 pieces of fruit we had last year, certainly. So very excited to see that, and to see, you know, the overall effect of the pruning job I gave this, that I threw together in a video as well, and how I'm trying to keep this tree a bit shorter, keep all of this fruit accessible. You know, this will be a tree that I'm trying to not let the chickens get a hold of because I want to eat it. The limb over here was not near fires. Yeah, we've got the fire over there in that corner, we've got the one in this corner, and the one back here, but there was not one near this kind of quadrant around the tree. And as I look in here, you know, I really don't think I see any fruit except for just the one right here at the end. So, you know, overall, just a lot of loss. You could see the blooms that have dried up that were there. There were plenty of blooms on here. And there's actually one relatively new bloom down here. It's kind of interesting to see. We'll have a really late piece of fruit there. But yeah, there's just not fruit along the branches that didn't have the fire. So I wasn't overly concerned with trying to save this peach tree. These peaches are ripe close to the time Japanese beetles are out, so I wasn't trying to save much here. But even here, we've got clusters of peaches that we'll get to eat this year. So hopefully we'll get some of those saved. This is where I was thinking I might use that frost blanket, cover up some of these limbs, and maybe the Japanese beetles won't get into those nearly as bad as they get into the rest of the tree. So maybe we can save some. And finally, taking a look at the red leaf Indian peach tree that we've got out here, I definitely see a heavier crop set than we had up there by the house. So we've got a little guy up here. As you move down along, we've got another one here. Got another one here. Got a couple more up here. Definitely a lighter crop than what we've seen on those other peach trees that I worked on. But I think overall, it was warmer in here because of all the fires and things going. We only had just that one fire here, but we do have a few plums. So I've got one right here, which you can see. And there's a few more in here. Overall, not very many. I was hoping that spraying was gonna be all I did to these to get some. And so that fire was kind of an afterthought, a little late. But we do have certainly some plums in here. So I'll at least get to try this for once. And I found a few plums up in this one. Didn't have any fire near it, but there are just a couple. So I think, you know, overall the orchard was just a little bit warmer, and that helped to make sure we'd get to at least taste these plums this year. We've got the 2 sweet cherries here, and I've just seen just a few in here. Just had that one fire near this one, so we've got a cherry here. There are a couple more right up in there, but overall there's not very many except for right in this area of the tree. Around the tree though, there aren't any more. And in this tree I haven't found a single sweet cherry. So I don't think our bag protection did any help, and we didn't have fires near it. So once that sprayer went down, I think the hope was gone for this one because we didn't put a fire into place. we've got our tart cherry here. Hopefully we have enough for a pie or something else that we can make, since generally you want to be baking with these or making some sort of preserve. But definitely had a lot more of these survive than we had the sweet cherries survive. So looking forward to hopefully making something out of these, even if it's a small pie. Taking a look at our pawpaw trees out here, they definitely took a hit. They had blooms on them and some amount of leaves, and we've got some coming back at this point, but I didn't expect them to fruit anyway. But we do actually have some new blooms coming on, so everything looked like this where it had dried up and burnt off. So I guess they're a little bit better, a little more equipped to handle what we go through out here, and they are definitely putting on some new blooms. So we'll see some pawpaws this year, and that foliage is coming back. It's just, you know, going to be a little bit delayed because the initial push was all killed off by, I think, especially because of that precipitation that we got on these. Our blueberries don't really seem to have taken a hit. They are doing really well. So we're gonna have a lot of blueberries, both out here and in the big field of blueberries we've got. These were not really blooming at the time, so I didn't really expect much of a loss. And certainly I was right on that one. Blueberries are very hardy, and a lot more of a delayed bloom than many other fruits. So they handled it just fine. And the chickens are definitely gonna enjoy eating from the blueberries out here, because I'd say I probably only get to about half and they get the rest. So was it worth all of that work? I think it was. Last year and the year before, we didn't have really peaches hardly at all, and I know we've never had nectarines. And now we've got loaded trees that, even if the tops don't have a lot of fruit, at least those lower limbs where those fires were, those are loaded. Were the black bags really worth using? There were a few instances where I think they did us some good. Overall, I don't think I would ever rely on those as my only method for protection, but foliage was definitely protected. And then in a few instances, when they had some proximity to a fire, I think that just helped enhance how well those fires were able to help, because it just had to keep it warm. It didn't have to try and keep it dry. So would we do this again? I think we would. I think we saved a lot of these peaches and nectarines that we wouldn't have been able to have a crop whatsoever had we done nothing. So really excited to show you that all to you guys. If you guys have tried anything similar or had success or failures in different methods you've used, I'd love to hear about that. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed seeing this, and later in the season when these fruits are really getting larger, might come out and take another look and really just see where all that fruit has set, see the distribution along the trees, and maybe we'll learn a little bit more from it then. Thanks for watching.